Happy World Oceans Day, everyone. Hello, welcome to each of you, wherever you are joining us from around the globe. I'm Minna, founder of Bloomar for Change, and I'm very, very grateful to be here today. Thank you for showing up. We are all connected by these vast and beautiful waterways. I would like to acknowledge that I am on the ancestral and unceded territory of the Squamish people. I'm honored to share space over the airwaves and to introduce three inspiring women. Each one a change maker and passionate advocate standing up for our oceans. Huge gratitude to Ruth Simons, project lead for Acatsum House Sound Biosphere Region Initiative, and Bridget John of Acatsum House Sound Marine Reference Guide over here with us for hosting and moderating today's key presentation, Ocean Wonders by Jackie Hildering. Ruth has lived near Howe Sound all her life and is happiest spending time on or beside the ocean with her grandkids. She's working together with many partners who also share a passion for the natural beauty of Acatsum House Sound, striving to have it recognized for the special place that it is, helping to protect the life that is returned to these waterways and the wonder that it holds within. Thank you, Ruth. Bridget is with the Acatsum House Sound Marine Reference Guide. She lives a life of adventure right here in Squamish. She loves the ocean and has gone to school for many years. She has a degree in biology and oceanography. Bridget has worked in several volunteer roles. She also has great experience with OceanWise. To all the young people out there and the older ones, Bridget is someone who has followed her passion and is working to protect our oceans. You can too. And as you saw at the start, Bridget is in charge. So over to you, Bridget, for some housekeeping.
Thank you, Minna, for those wonderful introductions. I've just got a few housekeeping things to go through. This will be a 1-hour Zoom call, so we'll be ending at 10:30. As this is a Zoom webinar, you won't have access to your audio or video as attendees. However, we do highly encourage you to ask all your questions in the question and answer box found at the bottom of your screen. As well as we encourage you to use your chat box for any comments you might have. After the presentation, we will be inviting you to post your questions in the question and answer box so that Jackie can answer more of your wonderful questions. For the best view of the Zoom call, at the top of your screen, you can change from speaker view to gallery view and back to speaker view. Speaker view is probably the best one to have. I want you today to listen, learn, inspire, take action. There are so many things that you can do to help our oceans on World Oceans Day and beyond. Start thinking about some of the things that you can do. And stay tuned for the end of this webinar as we have a special challenge just for you. Over to you, Ruth.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I live in Chichioy, Aquilcan, the village of Lions Bay, on the shores of Howe Sound. The oceans are the lungs of our planet, providing most of the oxygen we breathe. They're a major source of food and medicine and a critical part of the biosphere. Today, on the United Nations World Oceans Day, we celebrate our ocean and the wonderful people that work to protect it. We are striving to become Canada's 19th UNESCO Biosphere Reserve, places that inspire and connect people to nature. Enjoy the presentation. Back to you, Bridget.
Hello again. I live in Squamish on the ancestral and unceded territories of the Squamish and Musqueam Nations. And I'm grateful to be working for the Howe Sound Acatsum Marine Reference Guide, working towards improving our health of Howe Sound, the marine waters and the fresh waters. Being on or around the ocean has always made me feel the most alive. I want you out there to close your eyes. Picture yourself squishing your toes through the sand, the wind whistling through your hair, hearing the crashing waves on the ocean, and smelling that salty air. Take a step into that ocean. Open your eyes. We are extremely thrilled to have Jackie here today, the marine detective, to share her photos and discuss the beauty hidden in our cold, deep waters. I'm excited for Jackie to ignite our ocean wonders. Over to you, Minna.
There we go. Last year, we hosted our first World Oceans Day event at Mamquam Elementary, thanks to Principal Ryan Massey and a passionate and dedicated team of teachers and parents. A big shout out to Mamquam, and thank you to all the students and kiddos out there today. In planning for the event, I was given the gift of connecting with Jackie Hildering. Jackie went to Mamquam Elementary and graduated from Howe Secondary via Don Ross, which wasn't called that at the time, right here in Squamish. She now lives on northern Vancouver Island. Jackie is a wonderful human being, and we are very lucky to have her here today, sharing her images and ocean stories so that we can all learn more and play a role in protecting these waterways and all their wonder. Jackie is the marine detective and loves to dive deep in exploration. She's also the co-founder of Marine Education Research Society, where she is the Education and Communications Director. She's got one of the coolest jobs I know of, studying humpback whales. Jackie has been on camera with PBS, BBC, and Animal Planet. She has received numerous awards for her work that she is doing. And for Jackie, above all, she is driven to create awareness of the life-sustaining importance of the ocean and positive action for the beauty, mystery, and fragility hidden in the cold, dark waters of our coast. I have the great honor of welcoming our key presenter for World Oceans Day 2020, Jackie Hildering on Ocean Wonders. Be prepared to be amazed. Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you so incredibly much, Mina, Bridget, Ruth. You can imagine how inspiring it is for me to be working with you in this. But here we go. We're diving in, and it's going to be fast. Okay, so what the heck is a marine detective? At some points, people ask me, what do you do? And I was trying to make sure that salmon were okay, and I was teaching children, and I was diving and taking pictures, and I was studying whales. And at some point it was, okay, what I'm trying to do is learn from the ocean and to try to make it count. So I'm a detective. I don't know everything. And those of you who are listening to me answering the questions, I don't know a lot about species that are in other places, for example. And that's one of the most important things, is to realize how much we don't know about the ocean and how we have to be humble and careful in how we treat the ocean. So that's what a marine detective is. You can tell already I'm a teacher more than anything else, and I'm trying to learn so that I can teach and wave my hands about it. Now, where am I? I'm up here on northern Vancouver Island, and that is the territory of the Kwakwala-speaking people who have been living here for thousands and thousands of years and know so much about nature. So yes, I get to study humpback whales. So this is KC. I've known him since he was a baby. That was 18 years ago. And yes, I'm a humpback researcher, and oh my goodness, it was something I never could have imagined would happen. I was actually trying to teach adults about orca and all the mistakes that we made about them, how much we can change when we have knowledge instead of fear. But then the humpback started coming back. Whales as big as school buses. And they started coming back in numbers because they're moving from somewhere else, but also because they got a chance to increase their numbers because we stopped killing them. Even in my lifetime, that's who we used to be, that we would kill whales. With no child on this call who's watching right now would ever allow that to happen. So yes, I study whales. Yes, they're as big as school buses. Yes, I have to know who they are as individuals. So I have to be able to recognize KC by his tail and by the fin on his back. But as wonderful as that is, people know that whales exist. But in that wonderful exercise that Bridget got us to do in thinking about the ocean, so few of us, when we close our eyes, can think about what it looks like under this ocean, the dark oceans of the world. We often have images like Finding Nemo or books where we saw tropical fishes. But the problem with this ocean and why it's so important to teach about it is it's dark. And what happens, and mainly with adults, is that adults will go, oh, I went to Hawaii. I could see all the fishes. It's better in Hawaii. No, absolutely not. If you can see all the fishes, it means there isn't the soup that then feeds all the little things, that feed bigger things, that feed the giants. But we make that mistake in thinking that dark water doesn't have life in it. But there's that animal that I said, this is probably the most successful picture I've ever taken, because this is just below the surface, and up in Port Hardy, where I live. And most adults don't know this animal exists. It's not important to know its name or even what it is, but it is so important to realize how beautiful it is, how fragile it is, how mysterious it is, and that it's right there below the surface. And what I hope that makes people do is go, I didn't know. That's here. That's here. This is part of why we have the web that has the huge animals that come to the surface and breathe the air that we do. We need to be careful. We need to be humble. We need to be curious. And we need to understand how important the ocean is. This is what it looks like in places that get a lot of current, the water moving around a lot, which means that there's a lot of oxygen. This is what it looks like. This is how colorful it is. This is a camouflaged fish. A camouflaged fish. How can you be camouflaged in those colors? It must mean that everything around you is that bright. So I'm going to show just a few species so that you know some of your neighbors. This is one of the ones I've chosen. Most adults will look at this and think, oh, it's some kind of jellyfish. Nope. It's really common, easy to see, and it's a type of sea slug. It's a hooded nudibranch. And it can swim around like it does. The things that you see on its back, those long things, those are its gills, its naked gills. What looks like Mickey Mouse ears is how the sea slug smells its way around. And if you find one that is dead on the beach and you pick it up, your hands will smell like watermelon bubble gum for hours because they give off that smell, and that's how they come together in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. And yet, you know that most adults have no idea this animal exists, even though it's really common. So showing you just a few more of your neighbors, let's look at a fish that people then think, oh, that must be where seahorses are, and the Finding Nemo fish, that's not here, this is here. This fish is as big as a strawberry. In the winter, it lives in the shallows. It's got the name the Pacific spiny lumpsucker. If you are round like this, you need to have a sticky part on your belly so you don't fall over. And this is a dad taking care of the eggs. Look behind him. So this little fish exists in our waters, and they fly around, swim around, and look like a little helicopter, feeding on the plankton. In this picture, you can see how the ocean looks soupy, don't you? So that is where there's microscopic little plants, microscopic little animals. Then there's this. And I'm stopping for a minute because if anybody made a sound like ew, we've got some really big chances to learn. It is absolutely ridiculous, especially adults, when they see an animal like an octopus and go, ew. That is ridiculous. Animals look exactly like they're supposed to. Octopuses are supposed to look like octopuses. And we need to learn, as marine detectives, how very different. I understand that everything is the way it is for a reason. So there is, for example, how does this poo? Where are the holes? And then we can understand and figure out and respect our neighbors. So there is no ooh here. And we humans, we're weird. Very often we look at something like that little fish we just saw and go, ah, it's cute. And then we see this and go, oh, why? It's perfect. If you're using your learning, you look at this and go, wow, that's really different. What's different about it? It's got a really big head. Why does one have a big head and the other one has a smaller head? It must be for a reason. And I know already, especially the North Island students, you guys know they look like rocks. They must live amongst the rocks. Yeah. If one has a bigger head, I wonder if it has to fight where the other one doesn't. But they both have big heads. But really, to make the point that there is no ooh, look at this face. He lives in Port Hardy. Yeah, how can this ever be thought of as ugly? There is no ugly in nature. There's perfection. And to really make that point, look, if it looks exactly like a Muppet, and this guy is called Statler, the wolf eel, how on earth could it be ugly? Not true. To use your thinking then, so here's a clue to be a detective. This is the jaw of a wolf eel. This is the upper part up here. It even is bony on the top. Wow, cool adaptation. I wonder what that lets it eat. And you would come up with all kinds of wonderful hypotheses, scientific ideas, but to be quick and give it to you right here, you can figure it out for all kinds of other animals, why they are the way they are. This is so that snap, you can eat urchins and get to the good stuff inside. That's why they have those bony jaws. Everything is the way it is for a reason. They're a wolf eel, but they actually belong in a completely different family. Sometimes the common names are really, really confusing. So the tail, this is a dad, yeah? The tails of wolf eels are really, really long. You can see how they use their fins to stay stable. And having a long tail like that means that you can den up in the rocks and not need a really big space because your tail can kind of twist in between the rocks. But also, everything is the way it is for a reason. That means that Mr. and Mrs. Wolf eel can take turns taking care of the eggs. So that big yellow ball you see is thousands of eggs. And they're using their tails to wrap around it to take care of the eggs. Everything is the way it is for a reason. So those are just a few of your neighbors. The cold waters, they're also the ocean of giants. We should have the world's biggest sea star. We do have the world's biggest sea lion. We have the world's biggest sea turtle. We have the world's biggest whale. We have the world's biggest octopus. We have the world's biggest chitin, the world's biggest barnacle, the world's biggest sea slug. And why are there so many giants? Why is there so much? And why are they so big so often? You already got some of this, right? It's because our ocean has so much life, so much of the small life in it. So this is a kelp forest, my absolute favorite place to be. And the plant-like life in the ocean is everything from the big kelp in the forest like this, but also the ocean looks green because there's all kinds of microscopic little plant-like life in there. The animal life that we call plankton, so plankton means to drift. Plankton can be really big jellies too. So these are krill, and really important to baleen whales. And we know that those are animal plankton. The little krill can't go against the current, stopping themselves from where they're going. But a lot of us, including adults, don't understand that the ocean is full of really, really tiny babies and sex cells as well. So this is a baby that has been made way bigger with a microscope. You can see the tiny hairs, so it's actually feeding on little things that are even smaller than it. But what happens then is in the plankton soup of the ocean, this baby grows bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. It settles to the bottom of the ocean, makes its own shell, and it's this, one of your neighbors. You can see the little animal at the top, the orange body, and of course it's made its own shell. We make our own teeth, for goodness sakes. The only animal that doesn't is a hermit crab. Here's another example of the plankton. So this has been made way, way bigger than it actually is. It grows bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. It settles to the bottom of the ocean, attaches with its head, develops a shell, and then spends its life kicking food into its mouth with its foot. Barnacles. Look at them feeding on the soup of the ocean. And this again is the world's biggest barnacle. There's different kinds of barnacles. So that's why there's so much life here. Why is there more life? Well, because we get all this current, the water moving around between high tide and low tide, gets squeezed through narrow passes, the oxygen and food gets mixed up in it. Cold water has more oxygen in it than warm water. And as a result, you get more of the tiny things, so you get more of the big things. And you get more oxygen being made as well, and more carbon dioxide being taken in. So you can't have the big guys without the little guys. So here we go. I'm a humpback researcher. Now I'll talk about humpbacks again. So this video that you're going to see was taken right where I live. And I could explain what this whale is doing to you because I know from this video who it is. This is Crescent. But instead, and the adults will understand this, I have to play a video by David Attenborough. So you are going to hear the voice of God explaining what is happening here, but you will see the ocean looks thick. As a result, there's all kinds of tiny fish. The tiny fish get scared. These are little herring. The birds are trying to get them from the top. They get a chance, the gulls, because other birds are pushing them down from below. And then you see a giant named Crescent. So here you go, lunge feeding, which happens all along our coast with the big baleen whales.
The nerves only attack from beneath, trapping the fish against the surface. But they push the herring within range of the gulls. It's a feeding frenzy. The table is set for the mightiest predator of them all.
I will be very, very, very surprised if there is not a question at the end about this video, or even several questions. And yes, I'm baiting you, but this lets you see small things that we can't even see. It means little fish means that there can be whales that take in gigantic mouthfuls of them and then push out the salt water and swallow the food. I can't wait to hear your questions. But why is this all important? So here is yet another sea slug. And for those of you who had questions, yeah, this is one of the kinds that then, where you can see the bright colors on the top, that it's taken the weapons from its food like anemones. Why is this all so important? It's not just so that we know the names of things, of course not. It's so incredibly important because life on land depends on the ocean. But so many adults think that the ocean somewhere else is better, or that they think that there is a separation between the land and the ocean. There isn't. Things go into the ocean through the air, through water, through the ground into water. And what does the ocean do for us? It really is Mother Ocean. Our oxygen, and we think that trees are important, and of course they are, but not understanding that the tiny plant-like life and the big kelp forests are making most of the world's oxygen. That means they're also taking in the gas that makes the earth too warm. Think about what the earth looks like. And my globe just disappeared. Look how much is blue. It's the ocean planet. And that means that it's going to influence what wind does, what the temperature is in different places. Yeah, what our weather is like. Food is in the ocean. Yeah, energy is there, transportation, but we all know as well, the ocean inspires us. It makes it feel better, as nature so often does. So it truly is Mother Ocean, but most people don't realize that and think there's a separation, especially with dark oceans. They don't realize that a lot of things even get carried by water as it goes through the water cycle. I think a lot of adults have forgotten about groundwater, that if you put some chemicals on the grass, that those go into the ground, which goes into the ocean. And this shows us the beauty too, that if you're listening right now and you're nowhere near the ocean, you still have ocean. You have ocean on the mountains. It's the water coming out of the tap. It's the water in the rivers, because it's the same water going around and around and around since the beginning of time, before there were dinosaurs. The same water. And I am going to share too that we humans make mistakes. What we need to know as well, like if we don't understand how important the ocean is, we can't learn from the ocean. And so often it is the ocean that shows that there's things that are going wrong that we humans really need to know about. And an example of this, and I am going to let the children know about this because it is so important, is we are supposed to have the world's biggest sea star. The one that you see on the right, all twisted like that, it's not supposed to look like that. The sea stars have gotten really, really sick, and it's been going on now for goodness, 7 years. Some kinds of sea stars are coming back, but this, the world's biggest, the sunflower stars, are still in terrible trouble. They should be everywhere on our coast. When we look into the water and we look on pilings, they should be there. And what's happened is, so the way that it's twisting shows that it's sick. And then what happens, and this video has been sped up, then the sea stars start shedding their legs. And that's normal. That's one of the superpowers that sea stars have, that they can grow back from those legs. But they never get a chance because they start rotting, like you see in the top picture. And this is all happening below the surface, and most adults have no idea this is happening. Sea stars are as important as sea otters in making sure that the kelp forests are okay. And of course, if there were a bunch of dead sea otters at the surface, oh boy, would we humans, be concerned about that. But this is happening in the dark below the surface, and not enough people are learning and understanding that what is believed to be happening, especially with this big sea star, is that there's a virus making them sick. And it's a virus that's been around for a really, really long time. But why do they get sicker now? And it's believed to be because they're stressed. Why would they be stressed? It's believed to be things that are changing because the climate's changing. So don't get sad about this. Or actually we should be sad, and we should want to change it and learn about it. But please know that the solutions for the sea stars are the same solutions as so many other things that are good for us. So all the things about reducing waste, reducing the use of fossil fuels, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. We make mistakes in about not thinking about where things go. If things can't rot away, there is no away. You can't flush things away. You go into the sewage treatment plant. If the bacteria can't eat what's there, into the ocean it goes. And again, we don't know. I know that a lot of the Squamish students and Northern Vancouver Island students know this. We have the world's biggest turtle that is supposed to be here in British Columbia. And that is the leatherback turtle. Comes all the way from Indonesia. Why? Because of the soup in our ocean. They want jellies, lots and lots and lots of jellies. And I think so many of the children already know, uh-oh, I know where this is going. Because we don't think about where things go, we think, oh, it's so easy to use plastic bags. Or we don't think, when we let balloons go up in the air, where do we think those things are going to go? They can't break apart. They can't rot. So they're going to end up somewhere, even if they're tiny, tiny little pieces. So indeed, the turtles can't tell the plastic and balloons apart from the jellies. And they get them in their stomachs, and that can, of course, be a really big problem. We make huge mistakes, but so important to know is that we learn from our mistakes. And that means that every generation, and I want you to smile, kids, it means that you're smarter than the generation before you, because you've learned all the lessons from before that. We don't stay the same. So it is so crazy to think, but it's true. Not only did we used to kill whales in British Columbia up to when I was still young, we killed basking sharks. Yeah, we killed anything, seals and sea lions. We bombed the places that they had their babies. But we even had, and this is true, we even had a machine gun, this kind of machine gun, at the middle of Vancouver Island, put there by our government to kill orca. There is no way any child would ever let this happen. But it's who we used to be. We were afraid and we didn't have knowledge. We thought there's too many killer whales, too many orca. They all eat our salmon. There must be less. We don't think like that at all anymore. And that's so important to know, is that we change when we learn, when we're not afraid, and then we care way more, and we do way more. And important to know, this machine gun was never fired because of two reasons. It's because the orca moved away. That was just good luck. But also somebody thought, maybe it's not a good idea to have bullets all over the place when there's humans around as well. But this is who we used to be. We make mistakes, we learn. It's incredibly important to realize how little we know. We know so little. So this beautiful, beautiful animal I photographed up here, it is in water that is only this deep, right in the eelgrass. And it is a completely new species of stalk jelly. Those little pom-pom things is how it gets plankton, and then it brings it to its mouth. A completely new species right below the surface. That's how little we know. But other than just species, right in Howe Sound, all along our coast actually, there's these incredible sponges. They thought they were gone, yeah, that they went away at the time of the dinosaurs, that none were left. But when we have the technology to look deep enough, but these, for example, are actually quite shallow, it's like, oh my goodness, there's these incredible animals, these incredible sponges that support all kinds of other life. That's how little we humans know. We're still discovering new ecosystems, not just different species. And just really to hit home how little we know, and it's not because I'm a bad whale researcher, I'm not. But it's so important to know that we don't even have the most basic things figured out about the giants that breathe the air that we do and that come up to the surface. Nobody on Earth, if you remember Crescent going, oh, and taking in all the herring, nobody on Earth knows how the humpback whales and other baleen whales know the food is there. They don't have the click, 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 like orca do, where they can tell one kind of salmon above another kind of salmon, for example, by being able, they have really good eyesight, but to be able to get a message back because the water is so dark so often. But not only does nobody know how humpbacks find their food and other baleen whales, they also are learning. So this is conger, and imagine what it is like as somebody learning from the whales and the other life in the ocean, that one day I see this whale I know really, really well, and he's hanging there with his mouth open like this. You are looking right up at the top of his mouth, and you can see all the baleen hanging down that allows the water to go out, because he's a mammal and he can't have salt water in his body just like we can. So what we have learned from them is that some humpbacks, sometimes when there isn't a big ball of fish like you saw in the video, they'll just hang there. The birds are still dashing around trying to go after the little fish, and the little fish will hide in the humpback's mouth. Not a good place to hide. But they're learning from one another to do this. When there aren't as many fish to make it worth the energy to go, oh, and when there's still birds involved. So we know so little. And to finish this up then, and I think you know this is not just learning some more facts. This is about learning that the ocean is so important to everybody, no matter how far away you live from the ocean. It's so important, my goodness, to ever think that we know everything about the ocean. We haven't seen most of the ocean, certainly the depths. And like I shared, that there's even animals that haven't been studied or have a name yet that are even in shallow water. We need to be really careful. We humans sometimes think, oh, we know it all. Let's go ahead. Let's do this thing. No, no, no. It's wonderful that we're so smart, but let's be careful and find out if something is dangerous first. It's a really good idea. And then really important to know now is that we don't stay the same, we humans. We learn, we replace fear with knowledge, and we do better. And that's the beautiful thing about being a teacher and getting to work with kids, because the kids take the information and they use it in new ways to make the world better. So what to do? We're learning about the ocean and how important it is. What really helps is to use less. Most important thing is to realize that by reducing, by using less, that is about being way happier. Because the less fossil fuels you use, and it's such simple things, like turning down the heat in the classroom, shutting off the lights when it's bright outside, wearing a sweater when you're cold, and maybe when you're older, you can even then buy the things or vote for the things that you really believe in that use less energy. but also less water. Why use less water? There's lots of it. Because it's the same water going around and around and around. Most water ends up at the sewage treatment plant where they add chemicals. So more water means more chemicals. And then of course, we're completely crazy by using chemicals that even have the skull and crossbones on the label. Yeah, and that we put that into the water. So using less of what's bad, I know that with your parents and teachers, you'll talk so much about almost everything we do allows us to use a little bit less. Most often that saves us money too. And then what I love, the best thing ever, is that when children learn, or when you're a lifelong learner, then you can share. And not from a, you must do this way, but by showing that by learning more and doing more leads to being way happier. Look at the people who are teaching you today and just how happy they are because they know that they're making a difference, not just for what's better for the ocean, but because of what's better for children. So above all things, love the ocean because it's Mother Ocean and you can make such a difference. And my thanks to everybody who's made this possible and to all the teachers and parents who have signed on and to all the older adults who care enough to watch. You have made me very, very happy.
Wow, amazing. Thank you so much, Jackie. Even though we can't hear you, audience, can you give Jackie a huge round of applause? Maybe post in the chat box that you really enjoyed it. Oh, excellent. All right, now we have got some time for some questions. And I know there has been so many questions at the beginning that we didn't even get a chance to answer. Jackie, we have so many questions that we need answered.
I'm ready. I'm ready to admit what I don't know, but can we high grade any questions that have to do with this?
The lures only attack from beneath.
Just watching it again for a minute.
Fish against the surface.
Notice how the gulls can't dive down. They have to throw themselves down to get the fish. Oh, by the way, you don't want to be herring. Just watching again for a minute. There's all the scales from the herring. They think they're safe because they're in a big bowl. Crescent just had lunch. Okay, there must be questions about
yes, there are definitely some questions here. Okay, our first question is what kind of whale scooped up the fish? From Aaron.
Oh, Aaron, that's a humpback. That is Crescent, specifically the humpback. I could see his tail in the video, so I knew it was him.
We've got another question. Did the whale eat the birds?
Yes! Yes! The crowd goes wild! Yeah, the question is indeed, along comes a humpback whale or a different kind of baleen whale that feeds on herring or krill. There's all this like, I want to eat too. Thank goodness there's so much herring on our coast. Maybe we shouldn't fish as much, we humans. And then, there goes the humpback through it. Well, you can imagine what happens. Sometimes there's birds that get stuck in the baleen. Yeah, I would be the little bird at the end that is getting the little fish, just one more little chocolate. That would be me. Yeah, and then along comes the humpback whale. But let's think about how everything is the way it is for a reason. So if you're a baleen whale, you've got no teeth. You can't chew. And your stomach needs to have small things for the chemicals to be able to break it down, to get all the good stuff out. So that means you can't eat big things because big things would not be digested. So how did nature make sure that that's the case? The throat of a whale, the humpback, is only as wide as the width of my hand. This is it. So that means that the birds can't go down the throat. And thus they're really tiny birds. and then they come out the other side, and the scientific name for that is actually a bird brick. Stand by for a blog that actually shows what the poor little birds look like when they come out. But I will never forget the first time that it clicked for me, like, oh, of course, they can't swallow a bird as big as a gull. And the way that I learned is because I was waiting for a humpback called Ripple to come back up. And I saw a big cloud of scales come up, and then bloop, 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 3 drowned gulls. Because they can't stay down as long. So sometimes they get hit, and then we try to save the birds when they get hit. We can't save this one. Sometimes they drown. Small birds end up, here we go, poo again, coming out the other side and being bird bricks, and no, they're not alive. But sometimes there are really, really lucky birds. This is a common murre. Look at the bird in the mouth here. Yeah, what's crazy is this is Guardian the humpback. She opened her mouth. There was the common murre. The bird did not get out. It had a chance. It didn't get out. Guardian closed her mouth again. She must have felt the bird flying around. It couldn't go down the throat. She then came up, and finally the bird decided, maybe I should get out of here. And oh boy, the stories it could tell at home that night. It's like, I smelled fish. It went dark. I saw the light. I went to the light. But even more interesting is look what's happening here. This is a humpback that's trap feeding. And because of the ecosystem and everything going after the herring, look at what happened here.
Holy crap. Look at the fish. Look at the fish in the boat. That is wicked, man. Wow. Oh, I got that on video. The seal.
See what's happening? If you can't swallow a bird, you sure can't swallow a seal. So out the humpback's mouth it came. Sorry, Bridget, I am ready for more questions. So what happens to the birds? Now you know. They can't be swallowed.
All right, we've got a question from Shannon. What is the coolest animal you've ever seen?
Oh dear, I have difficulty with questions like this because I see how things are connected. So I find it really difficult to talk about the coolest. There's a lot of 10s on a scale of 1 to 10. But things where I learned an awful lot is like the first time I saw a whale hanging with its mouth open and going, oh boy, now what's going on and what do I have to learn? And then the other thing was when I saw a leatherback turtle. And it's like finding the smallest needle in the biggest haystack. And it was in British Columbia's waters, just to realize that it had come from so far. Yeah, all the amazing things. So those are 2 of the big things.
Wow, amazing. We've got a question from Evan in grade 1. Does the water from the ocean go into the Port McNeill water tower? It's a good question.
It's an incredibly good question. And because it's all the same water, I can say yes, but not directly, Evan, right? So it's a complicated answer, but it isn't salt water because we can't drink salt water because our kidneys, we're not like fish where we can take the salt out of the water. So it's in some places they actually have that they take the salt out of the water and then it goes into a water tower. But the water, the amazing water that we have actually comes out of the ground. It's groundwater, but it does indirectly come from the ocean because it's the same water going through all these different stages. So eventually ocean water ends up being groundwater and then going back to ocean water.
Very cool. Next question is from Lake. Why do all the fish hide in a big ball?
Yeah, like it's such a good question. And it sounds like you would be the fish going, wait a minute. I think I'll go off on my own over here. And it's because actually the way that nature works is animals need food. So there's still enough herring if we don't mess things up where some survive, but their job in nature is to feed things as well. So we have to think of how things worked over thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And the way that it worked is that before there were big whales, big baleen whales, it would make a lot of sense to ball up because there's safety in numbers. So it means that somebody else might be eaten, but enough survive. But then the way that nature works is now there is an opportunity for a different animal to use the fact that the fish ball up like that. So they still do it because that's the way, what they've learned to do. That's their programming. But that left a space for then the whales that go and take it all in.
Amazing. We've got a kind of two questions that are very similar from Trish and Sally. How do birds seem to swim underwater sometimes? Do they hold their breath?
It's there again, like the beauty of everything is the way it is for a reason. So we get stuck thinking birds, they all fly the same way. There's so many different kinds of birds with so many different jobs in nature, so many different ways of being. Think of an eagle versus a hummingbird, for example. So the birds that you saw diving, the two main ones there are common murres, and they can dive to an incredible 180 meters. How they don't get squished down by the ocean, nobody knows. And then there's another one called the rhinoceros auklet because it gets a bump on its nose. But those birds are actually not good at getting off the water easily. They can't just go woof, because their job in nature is that it's more important that they can dive. So they're incredibly good at swimming underwater, even to incredible depths. But that means that there's a trade-off. If you're going to be really good at this, it means that you're not going to be able to get off the water as easily.
I think everyone's really excited about the humpbacks in these questions. We've got a question from Claire. Here's the next question. How deep can humpbacks go, and does anything eat humpback whales?
Yeah, so no, okay, so how deep can they go? Kind of a magic depth for a lot of whales. Some of them are incredibly deep diving, like beaked whales, which are also off our coast. But humpbacks are about 250 meters. And it's hard for me to think right now about how long. If you think about most tracks, like when we run around, it's about 1/4 of that. Yeah, so they're not super deep diving whales most often because so much of their food is up in the shallows. And then the second part of that question, so it wasn't just about depth. Some whales, like some beaked whales, can stay underwater for 3 hours. Let's think about that when they've got lungs like we do. But the second part?
Second part was, does anything eat humpback whales?
Yeah, so humpbacks and gray whales are two of our really big neighbors on our coast. They leave these waters. They leave these waters that have all the food for them and go to places like Hawaii and Mexico that have little to no food for them. And that's really puzzling. The females will even lose half their weight because they're giving milk to their babies. Why on earth would they leave where their food is, go to warm water? And what's believed to be the main reason is because there's one kind of orca whose job in nature is to eat other marine mammals. So they mostly eat seals. That's why the seals are so important. Sea lions, dolphins, porpoises, and baby humpback whales, minke whales, and gray whales. So by going away and breeding and having your baby somewhere else, there's less chance of these super smart predators whose job it is to eat other marine mammals being there to eat the babies. So the mums grow baby, grow baby, grow baby by giving lots of milk. Then they come all the way back up because mom's skinny and she's got to feed. And then they get fat again in our waters. So yes, orca, the one kind of orca that are now called Biggs killer whales, they do eat baby humpback whales if they're small enough. But make no mistake, humpbacks are big and they are tough. And they will make clear how big they are. And I identify with them. Yeah, if I looked different, if I was built for speed, if I had an orca bothering me, I would turn around and get away as quickly as possible. But I'm not built that way. What I will do is make sure you can see how big I am. I will trumpet. I will even go after you. And that's what the humpbacks do. There's one little humpback up here called Freckles, who we know has gone after the kind of killer whales that would have gone after her as a baby 18 times.
Wow. We've got a really cool question from Trish here. She said, how often do you find something on your dives that you haven't seen before?
Trish, it's so wonderful because it shows an understanding of, okay, how much isn't known then, or how much don't I know? Because it could also be, of course, that there's an expert that knows what I don't know. But I just dived yesterday, for example, and there was something again that I wondered, wait, what? I didn't realize that this happens. And it was a kind of seaweed that when we see it, when there's low tide, it just looks like lettuce. It's called sea lettuce. But then I saw it had little bubbles of air that held it up, and I didn't know that. So I think the true answer is every single time that I dive, I come away with more questions.
Excellent. We've got a question from Jackson in grade 2. He said, how do sea slugs eat?
Yeah. So their head parts, they don't have eyes. They can sense light, but the main way that they find their way around is by smell. And the way that they eat is they do have a mouth with, that they can bite at things. And what is one of the super cool things about sea slugs is that they usually aren't. The hooded nudibranch, the one that you saw at the beginning, is a little bit special where it does swim around. There are some others that'll swim around, so maybe there's a chance that they'll land close to their food. But most often, nudibranchs, one kind of nudibranch has 1 or 2 kinds of foods it really likes, and it stays there. And that's where it has a greater chance of finding a mate, because that kind of sea slug likes that kind of food too. So bumped into one another. And also they'll lay their eggs right on top of the food.
All right, our next question. Oh, so many good questions. Oh my goodness. What is the funniest creature you've ever seen?
Oh my goodness, when have I actually laughed underwater?
Or
goodness.
Another question.
Sorry, I had to laugh. One day I turned around, and we always dive with somebody else so that they can help you with equipment and all that kind of thing. And I turned around, and my friend Natasha was being hugged by an octopus. And I laughed so hard, but I tried very quickly to stop laughing because she wasn't in danger. This is the silly thing. Like, so often videos are about like, the octopus attacked me. It looks so different. I am tough. I saved myself. Nonsense. You were bothering the octopus. Otherwise, there's no way it would have attacked you. And you can find this on my blog. What to do when your dive buddy is being hugged by an octopus. And what happened was is she made sure that she had the equipment in her mouth so that she could breathe. And it was so cool to see the octopus flashing. It's like, what the heck is this strange human being? Yeah, I think sometimes the animals laugh at us, especially sea lions, because we're basically pretending to be sea lions. So that is when I laughed the hardest, but I tried very quickly to get serious so I could hold my camera, so I could show so many people, look, they're not scary just because they look different than we do. And that information's all in my blog.
We probably got time for one last question. I have a question, or there's a question here. How does the water stay so clean if there's garbage in the water?
Yeah, the problem is that's just it. It doesn't stay clean, right? And a lot of us understand when we see plastic or nets and things like that in the ocean, the things that we might still be able to clean up. But of course, there's all kinds of things in the ocean we can't see that are a problem. Like you can't see the chemicals that don't go away and end up in the food web being eaten by all the things along the way. And the same thing, and it's one of the main things, there's going to be an email sent right after this, and there's a link to a blog that is especially for the teachers and parents where I've gone into great detail about what I think might help in teaching. And one of the huge things is to know how important it is that things can rot away and how easy it is to use things that can be used over and over again. So for example, we might think, oh, the plastic bottle, it's a problem, I'll take it out of the ocean. Not understanding too that all the plastic that ends up there, if it doesn't end up getting eaten directly by something, slowly breaks down. It doesn't rot. Then it ends up in the food web. So the ocean, unfortunately, isn't clean. We used to just dump chemicals right into it, really bad chemicals. And we used to even use pesticides to kill things like dandelions right at the schools. Like, this isn't a long time ago. And not understanding that those bad chemicals that will kill dandelions, I don't just like dandelions, will go into the grass, into the groundwater, and into the ocean. So there's things we can't see that aren't good for the life in the ocean nor for us.
Thank you so much, Jackie. Unfortunately, we only have a few minutes left. And there are some amazing events happening on World Oceans Day today all over the world. With the Marine Reference Guide, we actually have an event called Celebrate Howe Sound, the CATSM, happening tonight. And I'll just post a link for that here. But again, thank you so much, Jackie. And Mina for spearheading this talk and her tremendous work to inspire and empower the younger generation. To Ruth for helping with this talk and her continuous involvement in protecting the environment. And Jackie, such an amazing presentation, such amazing answers, such amazing energy that you've given today. And of course, everyone today, we had 200 participants joining and some amazing questions from all of you, some amazing comments. And you know what? I wish we had all day to answer all your questions. After we close this Zoom call, there will be a survey that pops up and we would love for you to fill it out. Jackie's also put together a kind of a tips and tricks on ocean conservation that you can look at as well. But before we go, Mina, Jackie, Ruth, and I have one big challenge for you. We know you can all do it. We challenge you to share with 5 people you care about what you can do to help our oceans on World Oceans Day and beyond. Now, to get in touch with Jackie, the marine detective, Ruth, Mina, or I, you can email mina@bluemarforchange.com. I'll put that in the chat. But from all of us, we have one last thing we'd like to say. Happy
Oceans Day! Happy Oceans Day! Goodbye, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh, we got a "What's this about?" from Luis.
What's this about? The ocean. It's Oceans Day. And all the things that you're looking at now and that they live in the ocean and that way too many adults don't realize that all of this is right here and not where Finding Nemo lives. That's what this is about. And about all the things that make the ocean so important and that there isn't this idea that there's land and then ocean. It's connected, and things that we do on land can be good or bad for the ocean. That's what this is about.
Oh, we got a question from Sarah. She says, "Hi, Jackie. I heard about whale poo on the radio this morning. I am wondering about humpback poo."
Humpback poo is amazing. All poo is amazing. It's one of the things that all we animals have to do, right? All living things have to get rid of waste. But the wonderful thing about whale poo, and I'm sure, thank you so much, Sarah, by the way, of why it was talked about on the radio is because so many of us don't realize that how nature takes care of itself with cycling. And part of the beautiful thing of having way more humpback whales back on our coast, for example, is that what they do is they poo at the surface, and that's fertilizer. And if you have fertilizer, it means you get more algae, the small plant-like life in the ocean. And if you get more algae, there's more oxygen, there's more of the gas taken in that warms up the earth, and there's more food for everything else. Then it gets mixed up to the bottom, feeds everything. So even though we've got way more humpback whales, because thankfully we stopped killing them, it isn't that they're going to eat all the food because they're pooping, and that creates fertilizer for more life.
It's definitely a very important part of the ocean there. We have a question that's related to this, I think. How big is it? I'm assuming that's—
How big is poo? Yeah, I've seen My goodness, a lot of people, and I get a chance to talk about this now before we actually start, a lot of people don't realize, if you're from British Columbia, that there's the whales that we have that are closer to land, but I also get to do work way out there in what is also British Columbia's ocean. And we have still, thank goodness, some blue whales, the biggest animal that ever lived. Their cousins, the fin whales that are just a little bit smaller, sperm whales are out there, all kinds of different dolphins, beaked whales. But for the really big whales, whale poo, it's not like what you would expect is have like this, like our poo. It's really loose. And if they've been feeding on krill, the tiny shrimp-like guys, it's a big orange splat. And yeah, get pretty excited when we see it. And if whale poo is important to you, you can email Mina at the end and I will send you a picture of whale poo. And we'll follow up with any resources at all teaching about, and by the way, talking about poo and understanding how that's one of the things that connects us with animals that look even really, really different than we do. Have you ever thought about how octopuses poo? Have you? Because they do, and it's amazing. Helps you understand why they look like they do. Yeah, because there's so many reasons they look like they do, octopuses.
We've got another question from Fisher, grade 5. What made you want to be a marine biologist?
Oh, Fisher, by the way, you've got a really good name. I am actually, I think you can tell, more than a marine biologist, I'm a teacher. So in knowing how important the ocean is, and because I care so much about children as I do, then it made sense to talk about the most important thing on Earth and to teach about it and about how little is known about it. So that's what led me to start teaching first about whales, but then I got smarter too and realized, well, if people know that whales exist, I need to help people understand why the whales exist by looking at the world that they live in. So I never dive with whales. Goodness, they don't need we humans to do more things that don't help them. So I dive to try to show like what you're seeing in the pictures. Because what I hear so often from adults is they look really confused and go, that's here? Yeah, that's here. That's what lives here. This is why we can have so many big animals at the surface.
I've got another question from Karen Elliott. She says, my daughter would like to know if you've ever taken a deep water submarine to study sea life in the deep part
it's
of
one of my dreams. I never have. How amazing that would be. Yeah, I was there once when, oh, it was so scary when a little submersible, a little remote operated vehicle went down because actually a whole bunch of equipment, including a big tanker with oil, dropped to the bottom of the ocean. And this really brave person went into that, even though there was all kinds of wires and everything that little submersible had to go through. And that was incredibly exciting, but no, I never have.
Oh, wow. We've got another question from Louise. She says, how big is the average seahorse?
You know, I don't know very much about seahorses. I think that probably some children on this call know more about seahorses than I do. And I've seen them, but when I've dived in other places. And what I really try to learn about is the animals here. So the seahorses that I've seen, yeah, let's say that's about 5 centimeters. I'm sure there's some that are bigger and smaller because there's many different kinds, but I don't have a lot of knowledge about seahorses. There's lots and lots of people on Earth who do. I find it's really important to know more about what's right below the surface here.
We've got a really cool question and I'm excited to hear this. How do whales sleep?
Okay, so we know for the whales with teeth, so the whales, you think of orca and other dolphins, it's confusing. The word whale actually just means big because they're known as the cetaceans. So the porpoises, the dolphins, which includes killer whales, and we think also the sperm whales, they don't sleep, they rest. And the difference there is that they don't, their whole brain shuts down. What happens is they shut off half, and then the other half, because they have to remember to breathe. When you're a marine mammal, that's pretty important. And seals do this too. I've come across seals underwater where they're actually dozing yeah, resting underwater in the kelp forest. So we know that for the toothed whales because we've put orca into aquariums, for example, and dolphins. So you can do experiments where you look at what their brains are doing by putting wires and looking at the electricity, like you do for humans when you want to figure out what's going up there as well. But the huge baleen whales, the whales that don't have teeth, but they just have many, many strands of this stuff hanging from their upper jaw, you can't put the wires on their head to figure out what's going on. But it's probably true that they only rest as well because they have to remember to breathe. And then different kinds of whales, how they do this resting rather than sleeping, how they do it is quite different. Orca will get together right beside one another, and there's these beautiful lines where they're all doing the same thing at the same time. They're called resting lines. They're so beautiful. Humpbacks sometimes just hang there. And it's really scary because you can't even see their blow. So imagine for boaters, they're already so difficult to know where they're going to come up. Now you have something that looks like a log instead of a whale, especially in bad weather, that's difficult. Or sometimes they're even moving, but still kind of resting.
Amazing. Thank you for the answer, Jackie. Just to let everyone know, we will be officially starting at 9:30. We're just doing a little bit of a question and answer right now. So if you do have a question for Jackie, we've got lots of questions. Just post it in the chat button, or you can use the question and answer.
I'd like to talk about poo some more.
Where do firefly squid live? From Mac and Kindy.
Okay, Mac and Kindy, right there. You already know more than I do. I would have to do a search because we don't have firefly squid. I learned from the ocean here. So we have Humboldt squid, we have giant squid, neither of which I ever want to see when I'm underwater because they're quite ferocious. And we have very little in our water, by the way, that is actually scary. Yeah, it's just you have to be really careful as a diver that the water's not going too fast. That's the biggest problem. And then recently what I've seen, and if you know about firefly squid, you probably know about opalescent squid. That's what we have in our waters. They're about this big. And right now they're mating and laying their eggs. And when I dive, they're right there in the shallows in the sand, these beautiful long egg cases in big clusters. And there was even up in Port Hardy, yeah, up here, where I was looking to see how they were developing. And I could see that the little squid were starting to get eyes and everything.
We've got our next question. This is a really great question. On the photo that you're sharing, Jackie, what is that creature? What's that white creature?
Uh-oh, which white creature? It doesn't help that it keeps on scrolling by, right?
Oh, it was the very first one on your slide.
I promise I'll talk about that one because I think maybe that's the most important picture I've ever taken because it was so shallow. I'll already tell you, it's a kind of sea slug, and a kind of sea slug that has naked gills. So it fits in the family of sea slugs that are called nudibranchs. Nudibranch means naked gills. You don't have covers over what lets you take in oxygen and get rid of carbon dioxide.
Great. We've got a question from Kristen. Yes, Kristen, we will be recording this webinar to share with everyone else. So if you missed it, you can check it out later. You can tell your friends. We've got another question. Here we go. Oh, Jackie, I think we're going back to your octopus poo. We want to know how octopus poo. We think through their mouth or their ink or maybe their skin.
Okay, well, I love, those are incredibly, this is the beautiful thing about science. You don't have to be right. You get to have a scientific idea, and the students, people that put that forward, they thought about, well, what holes does an octopus have? What are the possibilities? Yeah, or could it actually go through the skin? So those are really good ideas. And where the poo comes out of, it's not the mouth, but actually the vents. A lot of people don't realize there's two tubes on the side of octopuses. They take in water and then push out the water through their vents. It's also how the moms make sure there's fresh water washed over the eggs as they're developing, and she never leaves them to take care of them, for example. So that's where it comes out of. But there is a blog, yeah, that I've written that shows actually an octopus pooing, and your life will be better when you see that.
Oh, we got a next question. This is about the sea slug. Why does a sea slug have spikes on it? By Marley.
Some of them, the sea slugs, we get stuck, I think, and think they all look the same. We have about 200 different kinds of sea slugs. Some that just are as big as a pinky, and they actually flap around. Believe me, I could talk for hours just about sea slugs, and the kids up here know that. But when you see them, like the one that's on the screen right now, those kind of spiky things, very often when they're colorful at the end, not only are they the naked gills, which allow the sea slug to breathe, but they also often have stinging cells at the top, which is how, when you don't have a shell as a soft-bodied animal, one of the ways that you can protect yourself. And one of the many super cool things about sea slugs is they often get the way that they protect themselves from their food. So there's a whole group of sea slugs that feed on sponges. You may not even think about sponges being animals, but they are. How do sponges protect themselves? Because that's one of the rules of life. They either taste bad, or they're quite sharp, or they might even be poisonous. So the kind of sea slug that feeds on sponges will taste as bad as the sponge did. And the ones with all the spiky things all over their backs, they get those stinging cells at the top from animals that they eat, like anemones. So they actually take the weapons from their prey and use them themselves.